our humanity is the foundation for our formation. So you can say all the prayers you want, you know, but if you are compromised in character and, you know, enslaved and addicted to whatever it may be, sacramentally, of course, those sacraments will ex opere operato still work, but you are not, you know, the channel, the reservoir you could be. What you think about when you think about Exodus is hopefully not these guys, you know, from America, but it's more your own engagement, your own deepening silent prayer life, your own attempts and struggles with the ascetic journey, hopefully your vulnerability in your local fraternity, and if your priests are involved or your bishop, hopefully kind of their spiritual fatherhood and the experiences. So I just emphasize that because, you know, that's really what it's about. Anthony prepared for 30 years before his mission, and he didn't even know where it was exactly going. You know, I think of Benedict in Subiaco, who spends years there. It's not as though he knows he's going to emerge at Monte Cassino and become, you know, the preserver of Western civilization. And that's the beauty of the Catholic faith, that's managed to be united, but also to have such local characteristics. For me, as I think about Europe, I guess, in particular, in Central Europe where we are here, it's, you know, the gift of the faith came from Europe for us in the United States. And however we can support the remembrance of the faith here, we will.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's awesome,
Brother Brian.
It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a wonderful. I guess it's been a little over a day, but it seems like a week actually. But it's been awesome. So,
And it's like, I think it's the end of some trip to Europe, right? You have now? So tomorrow you'll head back to the States?
Back to the States tomorrow. It's been a whirlwind. It's been awesome. We were to Rome, and then we followed the kind of some sites of St. Benedict at Subiaco and Monte Cassino, doing some filming and recording for a Desert Father series we've been doing with Bishop Erik Varden from Norway. So I think we filmed 4 months in 4 days.
Wow, okay.
So it was a full time, intense. But to be able to finish it off here, you know, flying into Vienna and meeting Exodus men from, you know, German-speaking countries, and also the Hungarians yesterday was a highlight. There were many wonderful things that we received and learned as well, you know, from that time together. So.
And what impression do you brought from Rome? What were you up to there?
Yeah, so, you know, really primarily just filming. So we've been taking, you know, the systematic. So we started our series featuring St. Anthony the Great, the pioneer of the desert, and Bishop Erik wrapped it up with a figure of St. Benedict, and that's why we kind of concluded with the sites of St. Benedict that I mentioned. And really, you know, his rationale in doing that is that, you know, it's in, you know, Benedict and through the gift of the rule, preserves the spirit of the desert and extends it into our own times. And, you know, that was kind of the, you know, I'd say the final month in December ended up very much being about the monastic life and its different forms, definitely from his, you know, Benedictine roots, you know, as a Cistercian and as a Trappist. But the idea being that all of us can take the sayings of the fathers and apply them to our own lives today. But, you know, many are called, and those who are, we wanted to encourage a little bit to take a venture and maybe take a next step into discerning, you know, the next path in a religious vocation. So, you know, we were just kind of filming month by month, and then, you know, the last month really was focused on Benedict, but we had a number of chapters in the systematic collection to hit, you know, on our way there. So, one of the chapters was on not judging anyone. So kind of the spirit of non-judgment, which is explicit in the Desert Fathers. And another one was on nothing done for show. The idea that, you know, in the desert it wasn't about spiritual competition. If anything, there's a funny saying actually about Abba Moses where some people come in to see him and he you know, some famous people, and he flees to the marshes away from them. Okay. And as he's fleeing, though, he accidentally runs into them, and they're like, "Hey, we're looking for Abba Moses for a word from a holy man." They're like spiritual tourists, and he says, "Why would you want to talk to him?" he's stupid and a heretic. And he goes off, and these visitors are so troubled. They're like, we came for a word from a holy man, but we've heard that he's stupid and a heretic. And they were like, well, what did he look like? Well, and they said he was big and black. And he said, that was Moses. He didn't want to meet you. So anyway, the Spirit, that nothing should be done for show, lest we lose the reward we seek from the Lord alone. Anyway, those were just a couple of the chapters that we were focused on while we were there.
But I think in the end, you're a little bit like one of those young men searching for a spiritual guide when you were meeting Bishop Erik Varden, right?
Yeah.
So how did you come to meet him?
Yeah.
How did you hear from him?
Really it was from our theologian is named Dr. Jared Stout. He's on our team. He reads widely, broadly, writes, extensively as well. Profound teacher. And he'd been reading Bishop Erik for many years. So he was the one that really clued me into like, hey, we need to, focus on him and reach out to him and see if he'd be up for a project. And so we reached out a couple of years ago, and it was really just a simple outreach. The cool thing about Bishop Erik is he doesn't have an assistant or an office to go through. You can just get to him.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And he's awesome in that way. And and that's partly because the church in Norway is so small, but growing. And he's just very in touch with all the work and actual communication. And so we just reached out about a project. And I was so humbled to learn that he had stumbled into Exodus 90 fraternities, all in his travels abroad, and given monastic retreats as well, and monasteries as well, kind of stumbling into us, which was very humbling for me to hear. And so, pretty quickly, he was like, we should do something together, but we didn't quite know the form it would take. Eventually, we kind of gravitated towards the Desert Fathers, who, those sayings are sayings that he's stayed close to his whole, kind of since his conversion.
Yeah.
And for us as well, they've been an influence, and we're going to do a lot more to more fully and clearly graft our work onto the Spirit of the Fathers. And we've already taken steps within that. Maybe you've noticed in St. Michael's Lent, but we'll keep doing that. It started out, though, just as like, a little project on our app for our guys. And then EWTN got involved, Hallow got involved, and all of a sudden, we were like, what, let's just, share this as far as we can, distribute it as far as we can. And it's been awesome to see kind of a new audience form around it. Lots of young people who are searching.
Yes.
The Desert Fathers are so practical. Yeah. Just to hold up a book. This is the sayings of the Desert Fathers. It's not big. Okay.
Not big, yeah.
You can pick it up, and there's just numbered sayings, some of which are like a sentence. Now they're super dense, so you need to take a little bit of time with them. But it's not like you have to brush off a tome to get started. I mean, you can get started in a few minutes. And the wisdom of the desert, I think, is has been the source of renewal all throughout church history. But I think it has a lot to say to us now. If we can encounter it. So that's what we've been up to.
What is one of the practical teachings you have tried to integrate or that inspired your personal spiritual life lately?
Oh yeah, I mean every chapter I find to be very challenging, and there's a saying about Pambo, who was very close to Anthony, to the pioneer, and Saint Pambo, when he died, said something like, I never said anything I regretted. I never ate anything I did not work for. And still I go to the Master as someone who has not yet made a beginning. And it's like, yeah, I've said things that I've regretted, I can't say the things that he can say. And yet even this great saint goes to God knowing that he hasn't even started. And I think for me, as I read the sayings more and more, and I've been at it now for 20 years. So, I had an awakening when I was a young boy that changed my life through the influence of my father, through the influence of a priest. I'm not even close, to where I could be and where I should be. And even when I'm done, towards the end of my life, I will not yet have made a beginning. So, I think the Fathers are, humbling to read, in that way. There's another saying about how Anthony, it was revealed to him. So this is, really one of the greatest saints in the history of the church who, spends 30 years in solitude before he emerges at the age of, in his late 50s or 60s, with people just swarming him, to come out of solitude, to be a father to them in some ways. So I just make a brief note here. We're so quick to say like, oh, I read a book here and I'm ready to go. It's like, Anthony prepared for 30 years before his mission, and he didn't even know where it was exactly going. I think of Benedict in Subiaco, who spends years there. It's not as though he knows he's going to emerge at Monte Cassino and become, the preserver of Western civilization, essentially, through the order. These things happen, quite by accident and not by their own design, but preparation is very important. I think the question worth asking is, do we prepare for anything extensively today? And that's challenged me, and that's challenged all of us to take preparations much more seriously. But, Anthony, as he's in the desert, it's revealed to him that there's a layman in the city, a doctor, who, the saying goes, he gives everything beyond his needs to the poor, and every day he sings the Sanctus with the angels. And it's, this angel tells Anthony, he's your equal.
Wow.
And for me, when I read that, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, well, what do you mean he has an equal? That's in the affairs of the world. And he does, and I think what I took from that was, obviously, from Vatican II, we have a real clear teaching in the universal call to holiness, but, the inspiration I took from that was, hey, all of us can become one with God's word, if we allow him to penetrate us, transform us, and we can ascend to the heights, if we allow him to bring us up.
I think this is one of the, the wrong narratives or the lies inside the hearts of many believers, maybe especially Catholics, that there is this kind of hierarchy, that we have the priests and the religious, and they can live 100% Christian life, and lay people only have the 30 to 50%. And I think Exodus is actually a program that tries to change this narrative, that everyone is called to this to holiness in the end. And so you just were talking about the beginnings of Saint Anthony and preparing something, and then in the end also Saint Benedict, that it was there was no master plan for him to save Europe, and I think it would be really interesting to hear a little bit about the beginnings also of Exodus, and maybe when was your first Exodus? So who inspired you to do an Exodus, and how was it?
Wonderful question. So I would go on to the seminary at the age of 18, and I spent many years in formation. And, I'd say a couple of early influences on me were just my dad's awakening and conversion. And so, my dad showed me through example and an attractive life what prayer looked like. So I'd wake up every day and I'd go downstairs and I'd see my dad in his prayer chair, meditating on the word, chewing on the word. Now, some days he wouldn't see me. And so I would just look over there and just see someone, my dad, who was so obviously in touch with someone invisible. And that was before I even, took all the intellectual journeys into the faith, or really started, praying personally, I would say, because I was just a kid. But he modeled for me something very important that I wouldn't actually appreciate till much later. And then I got very involved in my parish and serving the Holy Mass, was a part of a young men's serving fraternity. And through that and the influence of a priest, went to the seminary at 18. And when I would come home from formation, my mom, would make a comment every now and again about how, wow, this formation you're receiving is so wonderful. I feel like every Catholic man needs a formation of body, mind, and soul, needs to bring their humanity, spirituality, their mind, and the call to apostolic life together, in themselves. And I was so fortunate to go to seminary at a time after the devastations of the sexual abuse crisis in the United States. And so the seminaries have been reformed, from square one, basically, to try to overcome, and prevent scandals like that again. And really what we find, and it kind of originates in the thinking and teaching of John Paul II, is that our humanity is the foundation for our formation. So
Yeah.
you can say all the prayers you want,
Yeah.
but if you are compromised in character
Yeah.
and, enslaved and addicted to whatever it may be, sacramentally, of course, those sacraments will ex opere operato still work, but you are not, the channel, the reservoir you could be.
Yeah.
And to think that doesn't have an effect on those that you serve is foolish, obviously. And so that's what formation was really all about, is bringing our body, minds, and souls together, conforming them to the pattern of Christ, the good shepherd, the high priest, so that we could be effective ambassadors, more effective ambassadors of the gospel. So I received all this for years. I discerned that I had a task, to do in the world. And at a seminary that I was not at, but I was friends with these guys, they had really started the beginnings of Exodus 90. There's a priest, his name is Father Brian Dorr, and many other seminarians around him, and they'd been running these kind of ascetic journeys, if you will, not as a formal program, but just kind of as an underground, hey, how can we grow in freedom to, again, support some of these themes I've already been mentioning about my time in the seminary. And that's really where it begins in that way. And I saw this from a distance when I was in the seminary. I kind of made the attempts at an Exodus, but you just need to keep in mind, like, there was no programming. The book of Exodus was just this background theme. You weren't really reading the book of Exodus. You weren't, there's no reflections, but you were fasting, more intensely than we do today, and meeting more regularly because you could in a seminary.
Yeah, sure.
And it was just really helpful to those guys. And so when I discerned out, that was the question is, can some of these experiences that I have had, the influence of my father, the encouragement of my mother, and is there something in this Exodus thing that, can kind of come together? And so very shortly thereafter, I started working to update, share, adapt Exodus for men everywhere. And I think that was really my dream, was in some ways to fulfill the simple observation that my mom had. Just like, hey, can we create a place of formation for every Catholic man who's willing and interested to support his formation? And, I've been at it now for 10 years come St. Michael's Day this year. So,
10 years, wow. Yeah, and I think yesterday Doyle said that there are like more than 20,000 men regularly engaged in the Exodus app now in the United States.
Yeah.
So it's incredible what God can do with one man who's open to listen to him, right?
Yeah. Well, it's so humbling. In the earliest days, there's nothing to show for it. There's another saying actually that I'll bring up here.
Okay.
And I can't remember the actual father. Doyle, was it John the Dwarf? Yeah, I think it was John the Dwarf. Sorry, I had to go. Doyle's here, my brother. He's my right-hand man and my left brain. Okay, so he helps me remember the things I should know. So he was told by an elder to water a stick in the desert and to just keep going until he said to stop. The problem was...
It reminds me of St. Francis, who said to plant like the plants... with the head in the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the problem was the well was very far away, and the spiritual father told him to water a tree that he would have to basically travel all day to get to, and then come back. So he could barely rest basically, and he did this for 3 years.
Whoa.
And there was nothing to show for it. And then all of a sudden, in the third year, John the Dwarf, remains faithful to his spiritual father, remains faithful to his task. That was very, much a struggle. And it just shoots up into this great tree. And his spiritual father takes a fruit of the tree, goes to there were, communities in the desert, obviously. Not all of them were completely isolated and alone. And he said, "This, my brothers, is the fruit of obedience."
Wow.
It's just like, isn't that a powerful thing? And it's just like what now my journey's not that intense, but there was years where there was really not much to show for it. Maybe there'd be interest in, okay, what's this ascetic thing? Is this Catholic? Basic questions like that. But, after a couple of years, the guys that came into it found it to be a blessing, shared it with their friends, and we've been growing that way really ever since. But it took some years. It took just kind of following the kind of gentle promptings of the Lord to keep going, and that the impact would be in the future. And praise God, it has. But what I would just say as it relates to the men that we have now is what's happened has been so disproportionately blessed, and I feel so fortunate to be part of it. And honestly, meeting Exodus men is so inspiring. To hear their engagement with it, their seriousness about it, the fruits that they've experienced, and also just seeing the diversity of their faces. Where they're at humanly, spiritually, their vocations. It's deeply inspiring, and for me, it's always motivating when I meet a group to just remember these are symbols of other guys right now that are enslaved today, that we can, with God's grace, work hard to free.
From all the testimonies you may have heard in the last years from Exodus men, what is one of those that touched you the most, like seeing that the grace of God in a man's life through Exodus?
Yeah, I would say almost every day we get a word that you could work a whole career for, and it would be worth it.
Wow.
So I would say one of the challenges is, I think what people, the way that we have worked. So when I mentioned this, in our meetings yesterday, but one of our charisms is ad orientem, and this means facing the east, and as we await the Lord of glory to come again, in His second coming. And He'll come from the east, and so this takes on though an expression in liturgy where the priest on the side of the people offers the holy sacrifice, the Son to the Father, and but He really disappears in the work of the Mass in a beautiful way that I think is so unlike a show. And so when people write to us, sometimes they'll be like, "You did this for me," or if it weren't for you, all these things. And, our hope is always to reframe that a little bit. Like, I can understand that as well. And of those who have influenced me, I can kind of have some of the same tendencies.
Sure.
But it's like, no, what makes Exodus so special are these local expressions. What you think about when you think about Exodus is hopefully not these guys, from America, but it's more your own engagement, your own deepening silent prayer life, your own attempts and struggles with the ascetic journey, hopefully your vulnerability in your local fraternity, and if your priests are involved or your bishop, hopefully kind of their spiritual fatherhood and the experiences. That's really, so I just emphasize that because, that's really what it's about. And so when these testimonies come in, I always kind of reframe it like, hey, well done. Like you engaged, you do have a part to play in your formation, and you're really doing it. But I would say just one, from a story standpoint, recently, I showed up to a monastery recently, and just a couple of the brothers came up, all in a little group, and I was like, "Oh, what's this about?" And a lot of them were there, because of their kind of Exodus journey.
Wow.
And I'd say for me, that's a pretty moving thing, right? Because I discerned out of the seminary, and to say that leaving was easy would be a lie. Anyone who takes their formation seriously and knows what's at stake and knows the dignity of the priesthood and its importance for the church today, I've found that the guys who take their time there more seriously and then realize that it's not for them, it can be a real struggle afterwards, and it was for me, during those years, and it is many of those sufferings, honestly, that I poured into what became Exodus. But now to encounter young men who are finding their own vocational paths through the work is just like, it gives me chills even right now.
Sure.
It's just like, that's what it's about. So
another fruit.
Yeah, that's a fruit. Yeah, and I praise God for that, and that's very, very humbling. So those are just a couple brothers that come to mind right now.
Okay, perfect. So maybe the last question. Looking ahead 10 years, even if we never have it in our hands and God has always plans different and greater than our own, but what would be your dream, your vision for Exodus in general, but maybe also especially here in Europe, in German-speaking world?
Yeah, to speak into that, I, as an American, and there's a real American ethos, I'd say, to me and to our team, that has its blessings and its curses too, which is why it's been so wonderful actually to work with, you, Brother Brian, but also, Johannes, Akash, locally, who help us to get into a context that's not our own and piece things together for us that don't quite make sense. It's really helpful. And I would just say there is a real American, you mentioned an optimism in us, and that's true, and I don't want to lose that at all. One of our other charisms is magnanimity, and in my experience, God cannot be outdone in generosity, but you do need to ask, and you do need to work. And so, for me, as I think about Europe, I guess, in particular, in Central Europe where we are here, it's, the gift of the faith came from Europe for us in the United States. And however we can support the remembrance of the faith here, we will. And I think that's very motivating to us. And we felt a real influence in, the life of Blessed Karl of Austria in the last couple of years. That's been like kind of pushing it in our hearts and souls over the last couple of years in particular. And we just want to support that. As for the next 10 years, I think it looks a lot like it's looked for the last 10 years. And I don't mean for that to be uninspiring, but I'm a real big believer that we exist for a reason, and that's to be uncommonly free, to through a contemplative life, through the ascetic lifestyle modeled by all the saints, maybe especially the Desert Fathers too, and a life in fraternity supported by local brotherhood, that we really can grow in personal freedom. And that freedom is always at the service of the growth in love, of responding more generously to the vocations that the Lord has knit into us uniquely, be that as husbands and fathers or priests or religious. And so I'm a big believer in just staying on why you exist and staying very focused and faithful to your charisms. And I have always found that in some sense, the more focused we are, the better, and the more fruitful the thing is. And the attempts that we have made to kind of take things into our own hands and speed it up or do something kind of creative beyond it have just not been worthwhile or endured. So I hope in 10 years it looks a lot like it's looked up to this point. I'd say the one area, we heard this yesterday, we hear it in the States, is we need to get Exodus men together more on a larger scale. And, it's incredible to say. We've had more than 300,000 Exodus men, over the last 10 years. Yeah. And, it's time to get everybody together and pray and worship and serve. And I don't want those efforts to at all take the place of local expressions, which are the best, right? We showed up to this retreat center yesterday, and I can't even understand this, the Schoenstatt sister. She didn't speak English, but it was translated to me that they've had Exodus fraternities here, and then she shared a couple ministries that came forth as a fruit of their Exodus experience. Yeah. And I'm just sitting there in awe because I've never been here before, and it's just like, wow, that's incredible. That's what it's all about. And so I think even as we kind of get, the broader fraternity together in Europe and in the States, I don't want it to become this big global thing. Like I'm not interested in that. I think there's something important for our time, that things are decentralized, local, adapted to culture. And that's the beauty of the Catholic faith. That's managed to be united, but also to have such local characteristics.
So concrete. Huh?
So, I want to do the same thing, within the Exodus Brotherhood.
Yeah. And it's great to be on this journey together. Yeah. As Exodus men, as Exodus brothers. Yeah. And I thank you for your work and for you coming here. Yeah. God bless. And Thank you. Brother Brian, thank you for all your work too here locally, and your additions to all our conversations have been great, and I so appreciate the formation you've offered to the men on the app and here locally. So thank you. Thank you, Jamie.